Secretario del Reino, el palio de Unión Unida.
In this moment, there seems to be similar conditions that we are facing. So it's very important to know what is happening and what people are doing and start sharing this experience. And there is in the comparative methodology a thing of comparing most similar cases, and this is supposed to allow for deepening. And this is perhaps why it explains a little bit Southern Europe, city, and very focused maybe also discussions that were chosen, because it allows to bring details.
For the countries of the European South, the crisis itself could be perceived as a common context. Despite the particularities, and although it broke out in different ways in each country, its causes, its consequences, and the policies adopted in order to address it seem to follow similar patterns. Following a long period of neoliberal reforms that mostly led to this crisis, further aggressive adjustments are imposed, both from international and domestic actors and interests, and formed in austerity programs that include, amongst others, the elimination of labor rights, the minimization of social welfare, massive privatization programs. The main goals of the workshop are to explore from a critical viewpoint the impact of the crisis, the dominant policies implemented, as well as new issues and novel social claims that are emerging. Secondly, to bring together both activists from existing or emerging social movements and scholars in order to exchange ideas, to exchange experiences from concrete practices, initiatives and struggles, and to collectively think about alternatives for radical action. So in this context, we believe that cities once more become the main places to accommodate both the discontent and the struggle. And in these conditions, as described before, of increasing poverty and minimization of welfare provisions, a wide range of urban social movements is emerging. These claims and actions challenge the current conditions of exclusion and inequality and introduce new collective forms of organizing everyday life in the city. And it's in this context that we believe that the response of South European urban social movements to the crisis raises some new challenging questions.
How we combine the local practices, because it comes from the real and context and the body and something concrete. How we manage to combine the theoretical offers or the basement. So I think, yeah, in everybody, it's not a question.
I think the corruption of the ruling representative, it's a very common thing in all the countries, and I think that this could make efforts to make claims together within this country. No? One thing is the debt, no, the illegitimate debt, and the second thing is the corruption of these elites. We are talking a lot about the crisis and the consequences of the crisis, but I think, and I tried to explain in my intervention, that the problem is not the crisis itself, it's the previous, it's the economic prosperity, because it was a prosperity only for few people, and it was a change of ruling the economy through financialization.
The spatialized idea of Eurozone as a new space for accumulation for the European and global capital, it's a useful entry point really to understand how European economies were entering the Eurozone when the Euro has been first introduced in 2000. And here is where geography and spatial inequalities and regional inequalities are very important.
Which is a little different from the experiences that we have been discussing since yesterday, which shows the relevance of uneven development of neoliberalization and the essential unevenness of this development. We all know, of course, that neoliberalization processes over the last couple of decades have played out very unevenly, and that the effects of the 2008 crisis have created even sharper differences among regions, among countries, among cities. So one really needs to know the specifics of each place, and we cannot generalize from one experience to the next.
Because one of the issues, it seems to me, that's going on right now is that a new way of doing politics is emerging. Nobody quite knows what it is, but it certainly is not what it used to be. That much we do know. And I think it's very much up for grabs, and I think it's also clear that this new way of doing politics is not absent a strong grounding in the social movements. And so I think the sorts of things that are being discussed in this room, being discussed in this room the last couple of days, seem to me to be absolutely central to what this new way of doing politics is about, rather than being peripheral.
Most of my students in the doctorate programs in Coimbra are from Brazil or from Latin America. And they keep telling me, asking me, but professor, we faced these problems with IMF in the 80s, in the 90s, in Latin America, in Brazil, in Mexico, and we solved the problem by disobeying to these guys. Of course, they bring about disaster to our society. Why are you incapable of doing that? You that are we have been preaching democracy, human rights and democracy and rule of law around the world, and you cannot solve this problem. Yes, we have nothing to teach to the world, and we are unable to learn from the world because of colonialism. We really still think that whatever happens outside is not relevant for us.
In Portugal, we are not so many struggling, so we have to connect with the universities, with the precarious movements, with the unions, with different, because this is transversal to the society. And also, we have to start pointing to the empty houses, because I think is there where is the solution for this problem.
In the last 2 years, we, as I've said, we have stopped more than 500 evictions over Spain. The third campaign is Obra Social campaign. It emerged from the immediate need of the PA activists and others who find themselves homeless and faced with outstanding mortgage debt. Given the unpayable nature of the debt, rising unemployment and the absence of social housing, our organization was forced 1 year ago to occupy empty houses and buildings. As I've said, we have 6 different buildings occupied, mainly in the region near Barcelona. The main things we proposed through this People's Legislative Initiative that have reached 1,400,000 signatures this week is these 3 things: the datation in payment. This means the house delivery finish with the payment of the debt. The other part of the proposal of the platform is the moratorium of evictions to avoid all these criminal situations, people dying because they can afford the mortgage, and also social rent, because we have 6 million empty houses in Spain. 500 people per day is being evicted, but we have 6 million empty houses in Spain. I mean, it's crazy, it's criminal, and these 6 million houses are property of the banks, which are the responsibles of this situation and which has been rescued with public money. So,
Milan, we study this process of use of temporary buildings, and it's something that we learn somewhere else. So And also, coming back from this meeting, I have a lot of inspiration. No? I think good practices to see other examples give inspiration and so energy to go back. But then the local work is what makes it change.
We discussed about important details when it comes to action. And when we want to reproduce action, or when we want to share strategies, when we want to share tools, to share a language maybe also. So I think this is what makes this workshop very special. Apart from fighting against, we have to produce visions. We have to produce concrete visions. We have to produce to collectively produce. Okay, we say no, but what will we do? And it was discussed about jobs, it was discussed about housing, it was discussed about different ways of producing the city and living it. So, so I think it's important to also to reflect on that, how to put all this material together.
The practices of reappropriation for the occupation of buildings, urban areas and abandoned spaces, both public and private, seems to us the only strategy to stop the continuation of this way of profit-making and speculation.
Esprimere in questa maniera nuova sovranità sui suoli e dare vita a comunità alla composizione sociale meticcia, esercitando in questa maniera uno ius soli generalizzato.
In this way we express a new sovereignty over the urban space and land and give life to the community stemming from social mixity, applying in this way a generalized land of the soil.
Questo modo di stare dentro le città rompe il ricatto che viene esercitato da chi sostiene che la valorizzazione urbanistica produce nuovo lavoro nell'edilizia, nuovo welfare e case popolari.
This way of being in the city is breaking the deal that is sustained by those who claim that the urban upgrading and valorization produces new workplaces in construction activities, new welfare and new social housing. Rebel communities that are aiming at the use of the city and its territory and mutual aid.
Anticorpo straordinario contro una gestione securitaria, razzista, fascista e omofoba della città.
An extraordinary antibody against the securitarian, racist, fascist and homophobic management of the city.
Thank you.
Within the context of cities in the crisis, urban space can be seen as loot or as assets, as places or objects for making profit, but it can also be seen as shelter or as a field of social inclusion, solidarity and interaction, or as a scene for collective expression and formation of new collective claims. The right to the city is put under question, therefore becomes a very important claim. Spatial implications or expressions of crisis in our cities make it more obvious than ever that in fact there is no alternative than to defend space. Only photo examples of defending space. Thank you very much.